superintendent indicated, under our constitutional system, my power as president is wisely limited. But there are some areas where my power is absolute.
I have fantasized, don't get me wrong, but that what if we could just beat China for a day? I mean, just one day, you know, I mean, where we could actually, authorize the right solutions, and I do think there is a sense of that on everything from the economy to environment.
And, of course, those nasty right-wingers could be rounded up, right, Tommy boy? So spineless vermin like you could have a field day. Let me tell you something, Tommy. You're not rounding me up, Thomas Friedman of the New York Times. You're not rounding up 30 million Americans. You're not rounding up the Tea Parties. I'll tell you something else, Tommy boy. You ought to take a good look at yourself in the mirror. What you're going to see is a swastika on your forehead. You have become your worst enemy, Thomas Friedman. My guess is that the New York Times writer named Thomas Friedman, who wishes we can become China for a day, is a drugged-up psychotic. And when I say that, I am guessing. But there is no other explanation for a man who holds himself up to be some deacon of liberalism to say he wishes we can become a dictatorship. So his dictator, his petty dictator, his little martinet in the White House, Mr. Obama, who believes he has absolute power, could then take control of every aspect of everybody's life from morning until night, override the government, override the military, override the press, and override every citizen in the country with total and absolute power. And I will remind you of something else, you hyper-educated fool. Lord Acton said power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That refers to President Obama, who is perhaps the most narcissistic, power-mad president in American history. He just said it at West Point. He said that he has certain areas where he has absolute power. Can anyone listening to this program name one other president who has ever said, I have absolute power? I have never heard it. I have never read it. I do understand that there have been presidents who have acted in that manner from time to time. But I have never heard of a president who said, I have absolute power at a speech where he was not invoking that absolute power. What exactly does Obama mean when he says, I have absolute power? And what does Thomas Friedman of the Old York Times, that failing rag, mean when he says he wishes that we could be China for a day? And he goes with that little liberal spineless laugh on NBC, and some fake reporter laughs at the joke because they're all members of the same failed little system up there on the Upper East Side. And he says he wishes that we were China for a day so that we can authorize the right solutions. Who does he mean by the imperial we? Does he mean him and his friends in the White House? Does that further exemplify the genius of Michael Savage, who has warned you for 15 years now about the government media complex? Let's get down to the serious issue of the Koreas. Let's get down to the serious issue of the Gulf of Mexico being obliterated by the worst environmental disaster in American history as a result of government inactivity or government incompetence. It makes no difference. Napolitano should go. Do you agree with me that Janet Napolitano should be fired? Who would you blame for this? Oh, please don't call about the oil companies. That's too easy. We know that the oil companies are in it for the profit, but we also know that they're in it for the gasoline that you use in your Prius. But where was the government for this last month? Why have they delayed Louisiana from building the sand berms that they've been begging for? Why have the Democrats shown themselves incompetent in this oil spill? And by the way, where are all of the loudmouth leftists like Spike Lee, filmmaker, who was quick to make a movie about George Bush and the Republicans conspiring to kill black people by controlling the hurricane called Katrina? That's right, I'm not making that up. We lived through that one. The psychotics in the film industry actually permitted this lunatic, this film school lunatic, pushed forward by affirmative action, to make a movie where he blamed white men for causing Hurricane Katrina and the disaster in New Orleans. Where's old Spike Lee now that we don't need him? Probably at Cannes, getting all sorts of accolades from the French. This is the Savage Nation, definitely not from France. 1-800-449-8255. It's the Savage Nation. MichaelSavage.com is the website. New York, Kevin, your opinion counts. Go ahead, please. Kevin, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation.
Yeah, Bill, listen, Mike, where's Bill the Butcher when we need him? All right. I just want to say I'm on the Upper East Side, and I'm one of the people who listens to Savage. I don't need 5 psychiatrists and a lawyer to cross the street. The reason that the attack was done is because China ordered it to derail the talks that were already prearranged with Clinton. It's obvious, Michael. That's the reason they ordered.
So
the
you
attack.
believe that this was sabotage? You know, we had a show soon after the initial blowout on that rig, where a Russian military newspaper reported that a North Korean midget submarine had torpedoed the rig and then detonated itself in a suicide mission. We had no way to confirm or deny that, but it certainly was as plausible as any other theory, was it not?
Well, look at how effective it's been since Hillary showed up. She's been doing nothing but having get-together sessions with children, and because they know, Michael, we've gone from Richard the Lionheart to Richard Simmons. As I always say, Michael, it's over. It's checkmate. The democracy is the rope we're going to hang ourselves with. We're in the final stage of democracy where the corpse feeds upon itself, Michael.
Well, I'm not as pessimistic as you are. There are days I feel so enraged that I believe you're wrong. There are days I ignore the fact that the feminists and the others have completely deballed America and taken the barbs out of our berries. How else do you explain that the U.S. Navy has become a useless force? How do you explain that these bums with admiral suits demand trillions of dollars and won't fire a shot or a missile? They could have taken down Kim Jong-il's launching towers under Bush. Why didn't they do it then? The answer is because China held us by the you-know-whats. And how did China get the power to hold us by the you-know-whats? Can you answer that question, Kevin? How did China get the power to hold us by the you-know-whats? Who gave China that power?
We sacrificed everything at the altar of free trade, Michael.
No. We sacrificed everything, and that includes all of us, at the altar of greed. We all wanted something for nothing. We all, listening to this show, if you owned a condominium, a farm, an apartment, a house, and you sold it and you made $50,000 or $40,000 or $30,000, you sucked money out of that housing bubble. Sure, Goldman Sachs made trillions. We know that. Paulson made trillions. Soros made billions or trillions. No one knows how much they made. But you, the little guy, you also enjoyed a lot from that time. Don't you remember you were refinancing? Don't you remember the banks kept saying refi, refi, refi? I wouldn't refi because it was against my will. My father taught me pay off your house, and that's how you live your life. You pay your mortgage off and you own your house. People called me a fool. They said, why don't you refi and take that vacation? I said, because I don't need to, I don't want to, I don't like to go anywhere. But the point is, everybody listening to the show, we all sold out our birthright to China.
Savage.